artists, we're going to get started with our little doodle drawings today. Now you're going to notice that I am just hopping straight to a pen, and I would encourage you to do the same thing as well. If you make a mistake, have an accident, then we can figure out how we're going to turn that into a happy accident. I am also just going to freehand some little squares on my own. Now these doodles are extremely relaxing. I'm starting with my middle one. I don't know why. You could start with the middle one, you could start with a different one. And you're going to notice I'm just doing kind of like a little upside down U or M shape. What I'm doing right now is not right. It's not wrong. It's just doodle drawing. Now I could keep this little pattern going and going, but I think I might actually switch it up. So I'm going to start this line in the middle of this little hump right here and go right there. Now you're going to notice when I'm doing this, I know it sounds cheesy, guys, but this is really relaxing stuff. This is kind of like art therapy. This is kind of the thing that you just go, and it's so relaxing. If you're talking a ton, you're really not going to get all that you can out of this. And that's really going to bum me out, because this is a really, really cool thing to be able to do and to just kind of have in your back pocket. Now I'm going to add an extra little upside down U kind of in the middle. It's just going to be a little smaller one. And now in here I might add some little lines or little pinstripes. Now moving right along, I'm going to go ahead and start this one with some little ovals. Now my next little oval, I might just kind of make it go a little bit off like that one, so that little first oval is not perfectly in the center. It's just kind of a little off. It almost looks kind of like a little olive or a little eyeball. Now I think I'm going to make them go out a little bit more. And you know what? I think I'm going to take one more layer out, and when these start touching each other is when I'm going to stop. So that one kind of touched that one, so I'm going to stop right there. I'm going to let that one touch that one. Again, you don't need to memorize this. This is just a way of doing it. It's not the right way, it's not the wrong way, it's a way. Now I've got this negative space in here. I could take a Sharpie and I could fill that in, and that would look really cool. Or I could even do some other cool little lines kind of tracing around this negative space right there. And it's going to get really tight in there. I'm not even going to go into that little area. I'm just going to go where I have room. Now I think I want to fill in these little ovals right here. So I might get a Sharpie, just because for time's sake it's so much faster to fill in areas if possible with the Sharpie. Now if you've got tiny little detailed areas you're filling in, you can use your artist pen. Moving right along, I think I'm going to go on this one. It's going to be kind of like a little curvy raindrop. Do you see that? Or you can think of it kind of like a little curvy leaf. And I'm going to repeat that same kind of shape, but I'm going to make it go different sizes, a little bit in different directions. If you mess up on one of these, then maybe you just introduce a whole new shape to this, and that is absolutely fine. Again, this is not about stressing out. This is about having fun, relaxing, doodling, just kind of letting your pen and your brain go where it wants to on these. So maybe in the middle of each of these little kind of curvy raindrops, I'm going to do a little line. That's pretty cool. Now maybe I'll introduce another new shape in here. Maybe I'll introduce some little circles in here. They kind of look like little berries. In the negative space, actually I'm going to add one more little doodad right there. And artists, one thing, I've actually kind of gone over some of my little circles a little bit with my Sharpie. So I'm just going to have fun and kind of add some little Sharpie dots around. And that's just going to kind of make it look like my little circles might have little kind of eyeballs looking to the side. That is one way of turning a little mistake into a happy accident. Now this is one of my favorite parts, shading. Take your pencil, and we'll be looking at shading in more depth in another project, but I'm just kind of taking the side of that pencil a little bit and just doing really, really small strokes back and forth where I want it to be a little bit darker. I want to add one more little thing. Ooh, I hope I don't regret this, but I'm going to just try it out because why not? I'm just going to add an extra little kind of layer within each one of these little raindrops. Here I'm actually going to do a little rectangle type shape rather than a square, because you know what? I can, and why not? And this time I'm going to go ahead and get out my Sharpie. I'm going to do a couple of dots just along the little edges right there, one up there. Now I'm going to be connecting the dots each time. So I'm going to do a little line back and forth. Now, one thing I want you to keep in mind, I'm not going to do any perfectly straight lines right here. Even those first two lines were slightly curved. And before I go out and out and out too much, I am going to go to my next little line right here. Now, a couple rules or guidelines I want you to follow on this. Your lines can go on top of each other as they get near those little dots, but you don't want to overlap them. And I'll show you why in just a minute. Now, I've done a similar drawing like this in the past, and some artists think they look like flower petals. Some artists think they look like little onions or garlic cloves, however you want to think of them. Now, I've got these negative spaces. I'm just going to keep going with my marker, and I'm going to expand my lines, puff them out, and then bring them back in as they get closer to that little dot. So starting at that little dot, bring it up, and I'm going to come back in and end at that dot. Right here, I'm going to start at that dot and bring the line out and out and out, and then it's going to come back. It's going to go on top of those lines, but it's not going to cross over. See how these start to look kind of like big pillows or garlic cloves or whatever you want to think of them, kind of smushing on top of each other. Now at this time I could fill in those little areas, but I might just do a couple more little lines like this. So every line I'm starting at a dot and ending at a dot. Even if I have to kind of bring it on top of a line that's going over. You just don't want to, remember, cross over, but you can go on top of the lines, especially as they're converging near those dots. Now I think I'm going to take my marker and I'm just going to fill in the little remaining spaces. Now if you look at this and you just think that's just way too dark, you can certainly do this with your artist pen. My pencil, completely optional, guys. But you can already see that marker alone is making it look like there's a little bit more of a shadow near those dots, but I'm going to push that even further with my pencil. Moving right along. Oh, are you ready for this one? This is going to be pretty awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and start with a pretty decent sized square. I want to get these little horizontal lines spaced out as nicely as I can, and as perfectly as I can. Again, I'm not getting out a ruler, but I do want to be careful, and I want to take the time and the care to do this. Now watch carefully. I'm going to take one line starting at the top, and I'm going to make it diagonal. And once I hit that next line, I'm going to stop. And I'm going to switch directions, bring it back. I'm going to make it stop right there. And then bring it out and stop, and back and stop, and out and stop. Easy peasy. Now, the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to turn these into little diamond shapes. So I'm going to start right here. In order to make this little zigzag right here into a diamond shape, or you can think of it as kind of like a turned square, that's fine. I'm going to take it out, and I'm going to stop at that next line and back in. And I'm going to take it out and stop at that line and back in. And by the way, guys, I've told you on every little doodle that we've done so far that yours doesn't need to look like mine. On this one, you want to mimic this one pretty closely so that you can get this effect. And then of course you could tweak this later on. Now I'm going to shift over. My next line is going to be parallel to this outer edge, parallel. So that means it's going to be kind of like a copycat line. So I'm going to go out like that because that's copying that line. And then I'm going to take it back. And then take it out. That. So you can see how that line is the same as that outside edge. Now I'm going to do the same thing with this line that I did with this line. I'm going to turn these shapes into little diamonds. Or you could think of triangles too. So since this one goes off the little composition square right there, I'm going to start in one more. The next one, again, I'm going to make it parallel to this outside edge. So I'm going to skip some space. I'm going to try to make it about the same amount of space as this one, like that. These little diamonds, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to color in with my pen. Now artists, notice I went all one way and all the other way. We call this a crosshatch. Now I want to choose the same shapes to color in. I'm going to actually color this in with my pencil, going this way. So every shape that looks like this, I'm going to color in with my pencil and make that about the same value. And I know that this shape right here, even though it's going off of my little square, I know that that's the same shape right there. When you get to the edges and it's hard to tell, just kind of look and see which way the pattern's going and you'll be able to tell. And now you can kind of see how that looks a little bit dimensional. And actually, if I were to take my Sharpie, because you can see that little cross line through, it might actually look better to color over that with Sharpie. Guys, just a couple more for fun. I'm going to start with a little C shape right here. So think about a C shape or a U shape. However, actually might even go a little bit smaller in there. And then I'm just going to start to just kind of curve around. Every little curve I'm doing is kind of coming back to that starting and stopping point of that little C. I'm going to do another little C, or think of it about a U, and I just kind of looped it around. Guys, don't stress out. Don't worry about trying to make it look just like mine. And notice, guys, I'm letting this go all the way off the page. And you know what? I could just leave that right there if I wanted to. I might just take my artist pen and color in and darken that first little inside shape of each one. All right, fresh square. I'm going to try to keep these sections kind of even. That's not perfect, but I'm not worried about it. So I've almost made like a little tic-tac-toe board. Now I'm going to divide each one of these little squares in half with a diagonal line like so. If you feel like you want to do something else, that is absolutely fine. Now I'm just going to have fun with different directionals on these. I'm going to start with this little center square, and I'm going to repeat that diagonal line within this shape. Now I'm going to go and do the opposite. So guess what, guys? I actually accidentally went ahead and did some of these extra triangles with those lines. So it became problem solving time. So I am just doing it to every square. Okay, so let me explain that to you since all the squares are kind of running together. So the first thing I did is 2 lines across, 2 lines down, tic-tac-toe board. Then I divided each little square with a diagonal line into 2 triangles. And so that bottom right triangle, I went ahead and did those diagonal lines sloping up to the right like that. And then the top half, or the top left of that each triangle, I did that diagonal line sloping up to the left. I could leave that right there. That's kind of a fun little look. I might actually add a little shading in the corners of the top part, or top left part of that triangle. You don't have to do this. You could do it somewhere else if you want to. It's completely up to you. Or you could fill in, if you want to do some extra little patterns or lines, you certainly can.